Supreme Commander Varkesh leaned back in his command chair, 6 appendages drumming rhythmically against the polished obsidian surface of his desk. The announcement had been broadcast across every channel in the Galactic Dominion, from the gleaming core worlds to the most distant colonial outposts. 3 human generals, captured during the assault on Proxima Bastion, were to face public execution. "Are you certain this is wise, Supreme Commander?" asked Admiral Zarel, her scaled brow furrowed with concern. "The humans have proven unpredictable." Varkesh snorted, a wet, bubbling sound that echoed through his breathing apparatus. "Unpredictable? They are vermin, with crude technology and an overblown sense of self-importance. This execution will shatter their spirit. It will end this nuisance of a rebellion." I remained silent, observing from my position near the rear of the war chamber. As senior intelligence analyst, my counsel had never been of interest to Varkesh, and today was no exception. "My name is Kale Vorin. I've spent 27 cycles studying humans, precisely 26 cycles more than anyone else in this chamber." "The execution platform is ready, Supreme Commander," reported General Threx. "Full spectrum broadcast across all systems. The humans will witness the price of defiance." "Excellent," Varkesh purred. "And security?" "Triple redundancy force fields, 4 platoons of elite guards, and continuous aerial drone surveillance," Threx confirmed. "Nothing will go wrong." I nearly laughed. Oh, how I wanted to tell them, "Nothing will go wrong." When dealing with humans, that phrase is practically an invitation for disaster. "Senior Analyst Vorin," Varkesh suddenly said, his compound eyes swiveling toward me. "You've been uncharacteristically silent. Share your thoughts." Every gaze in the war room turned toward me. The request wasn't born of genuine curiosity, it was bait. Varkesh relished putting subordinates on the spot, watching them squirm. "Supreme Commander," I began carefully, choosing my words with precision. "The humans have a saying, the execution announcement. Beware of Greeks bearing gifts." Commander Trask's breathing apparatus wheezed as he laughed. "What nonsense is this, Greeks and gifts? We're executing their generals, not accepting presents." "It's from their history, sir," I replied. "The Greeks were a human civilization that—" "Spare me your xenoanthropology lecture," Admiral Vantris cut in sharply. "Will this execution accomplish our objective or not?" I hesitated, carefully choosing my words. "The capture was too easy, sir." The room fell into a heavy silence. "Too easy?" Admiral Pelzar echoed. "Yes," I said slowly. "General Ekatea, General Miguel Rivera, and General Lena Novak are among the most decorated commanders in human military history. They've evaded our forces for years. Their simultaneous capture at Proxima Station, it's convenient. Too convenient." Trask waited. "We outnumbered them 10-1, and yet," I continued, "all 3 survived, barely scratched, when our standing orders are to eliminate human command structures on site." General Drake narrowed his eyes. "Are you implying our troops deliberately disobeyed orders?" "Not at all," I answered. "I'm suggesting the humans wanted to be captured." Laughter erupted around the chamber. Even Admiral Pelzar, normally the most composed among the command staff, let out a short burst of amusement. Commander Trask wiped condensation from his visor. "Your obsession with humans has clearly warped your judgment. Yes, they're clever, for primitives, but they're not playing 12-dimensional strategy games. They lost. We won. Tomorrow, we execute their leaders and crush what remains of their resistance. That is all." I gave a quiet nod and withdrew. There was no use arguing further. The execution would proceed regardless of my doubts. After the meeting, I returned to my quarters and pulled up the security feeds from the prisoner cells. The 3 generals were held in adjacent units, separated by high-grade energy barriers designed to prevent any form of communication. Yet they seemed oddly composed. General Ekatea sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed in meditation. Her silver-streaked black hair was tied in a perfect bun, posture serene and upright, despite the doom awaiting her. General Miguel Rivera paced his cell, stopping now and then to do push-ups or stretch. His muscular frame betrayed no anxiety or fear. And General Lena Novak, she was humming. Actually humming a tune while tracing patterns on the wall with her finger. I zoomed in on those markings. They weren't random. They were equations, intricate, advanced formulas that made no sense to me. My comm device buzzed. It was Razi, my only real friend among the security detail. "You need to see this," he said, skipping formalities. "Monitoring Section 4, now." 20 minutes later, I stood beside him, staring at a holographic display showing comm traffic patterns across the hegemony. "What am I looking at?" I asked. "The patterns," Razi said, his antennae twitching with unease. "Since the execution was announced, there's been a 17% decrease in Commander Varn's suspicions. Human military activity continues across all fronts. They're in disarray, their leaders are captured," said Cyrek. "No," Commander Varn countered. "Look closer. They're not retreating. They're repositioning." He was right. The human fleets were pulling back from direct engagements, but they weren't withdrawing to their own territories. Instead, they were forming new configurations, establishing positions around seemingly random star systems. "And there's this," Varn continued, pulling up another display. "Unusual energy signatures detected from the human prison transport that brought the generals here." A chill ran down my exoskeleton. "Show me the prisoner transfer records," I demanded. Cyrek's appendages flew across the control panel. 27 crew on the transport vessel. Standard procedure, prisoners in stasis during transfer." "Were they in stasis?" "According to the logs, yes." "And who verified that?" Cyrek hesitated, then admitted. "No one. The transport's AI confirmed stasis was maintained throughout the journey." "The transport's AI," I repeated slowly. "A human-designed AI." Cyrek's eyes widened. "You think they—" "I think," I interrupted. "We need to inspect that transport immediately." But we were too late. When we arrived at the docking bay, the human vessel had already been processed and repurposed, its systems wiped clean for security. "And this is bad," I muttered. "Should we alert the Supreme Commander?" Cyrek asked. I considered it. With what evidence? Suspicions? Patterns that could be coincidental? High Commander Trask would have us both reassigned to sanitation duty on a mining colony. "Then what do we do?" "We prepare," I said grimly. The night before the execution, I couldn't sleep. I paced my quarters, reviewing everything I knew about the three human generals. General Aiko Ta, a tactical genius, master of misdirection and chaos. Her forces had obliterated 3 Dominion battle groups by luring them into asteroid fields rigged with stealth mines. General Miguel Rivera, expert in psychological warfare. He once captured an entire Dominion cruiser by convincing its crew they were surrounded by a human armada. In truth, he had only 2 fighters with modified transponders. General Lena Novak, the engineer, the innovator. She had adapted Dominion technology for human use, often improving it in the process. Together they had formed the backbone of human resistance for 8 years. And tomorrow, we were to execute them. Or they would outplay us. Again. I tried one last time to warn Trask, sending a secure message to his private terminal detailing my concerns. His response came swiftly and predictably. "Analyst Varn, your concerns are noted. Report to medical for psychological evaluation after the execution ceremony. Your increasing xenophilia has compromised your judgment." Dawn arrived with the artificial precision of a space station's lighting cycle. The execution plaza was filled to capacity. Dominion military brass, High-ranking officials and diplomats from allied species stood in silent formation. Floating camera drones hovered above, broadcasting the ceremony across thousands of systems. And as I watched the crowd in the prepared execution stage, my gut told me we were walking into a... We exchanged a brief glance, one that said everything, and then returned to our duties. The prisoners were led out to a storm of jeers and thunderous cries from the gathered crowd. The Dominion had spent decades indoctrinating its citizens to despise humans, and today that hatred boiled over. General Kalen walked first, her posture regal, head held high in defiance. General Oren followed, casually winking at high-ranking Dominion officials as he passed, eliciting recoils of disgust. Last came General Celine, her eyes sharp, scanning every inch of the plaza, the guards, the force field layout, the escape vectors. The three were fastened to execution pylons at the platform's center. Then Supreme Commander Routh emerged, his ceremonial armor gleaming under the harsh floodlights. "Humans!" his amplified voice roared across the plaza, echoing through every broadcasting channel in the galaxy. "You have been found guilty of crimes against the Galactic Dominion, terrorism, rebellion, and defiance of the natural order. Do you have any final words before your sentence is carried out?" General Kalen was the first to speak. "We thank you for this opportunity, Supreme Commander." Routh tilted his head, visibly confused. He hadn't expected gratitude. General Oren chimed in. "You've done exactly as we hoped. You gathered your leadership, showcased your so-called supremacy." Then General Celine concluded, "And brought us exactly where we needed to be." A faint hiss escaped from Routh's breathing mask. Amusement. "And where is that, human?" "At the end of your primitive lives," Celine said calmly. Kalen smiled. "And the beginning of yours." Then she spoke a phrase in Japanese. It sounded like sakura blossom. Immediately, alarms shrieked across the station. The force field surrounding the platform flickered, then died. The restraints on the three generals snapped open in unison. "What is happening?" Routh shouted, stumbling back as the humans stepped forward. I froze. Gods help me. I knew. "It's a trap," I whispered, though no one could hear me over the chaos erupting from the crowd. Suddenly, dozens of Dominion officials stood rigid. Their movements changed, no longer organic, but perfectly synchronized. They reached beneath their robes and drew hidden weapons. Sleeper agents, I realized, horrified. Humans, disguised as other species using advanced holographic tech, had infiltrated every level of the ceremony. The drones that had been broadcasting the execution changed course, anchoring themselves to key points around the plaza. They weren't cameras. They were bombs. General Celine retrieved a small device from somewhere on her body, clearly hidden internally, undetectable by any scan, and tapped. "You fools!" General Oren laughed, addressing Routh directly, as Dominion security scrambled to form a cordon around him. "Did you really think we'd let our finest generals be captured unless it served our purpose?" "Kill them!" Routh screamed. "Kill them now!" Guards opened fire, but the humans moved with surgical precision, using the execution pylons as cover. Chaos spread. More disguised humans emerged from the crowd, eliminating Dominion officers with pinpoint accuracy. General Kalen raised her hand. In it was a Dominion command module. "We now control your defense systems," she said calmly. "Your weapons are ours." As if on cue, the plaza's automated turrets pivoted and opened fire, not on the prisoners but on Dominion forces. I pressed myself against the wall, paralyzed, not by fear but by awe. The trap had been perfect. The war had just turned. The execution begins. Trying to avoid the firefight across the plaza, I spotted Karel doing the same. Our eyes met briefly, and he gestured toward an emergency exit. I nodded and began moving toward it, keeping low. For 8 years, General Lena Virek's voice echoed through the station's communication system, hacked, no doubt, by her own hand. You underestimated us, dismissed us as primitives. Today, that mistake ends. I reached Karel, and together we slipped through the emergency exit into a maintenance corridor. We need to get to an escape pod, Karel panted. It won't matter, I replied. Don't you see? This entire station is compromised. They've been planning this for months, maybe years. A massive explosion rocked the station, sending us both tumbling to the floor. What was that? Karel demanded. I pulled up a terminal interface on my wrist device. The main reactor just went into overload. And gods! The external security feeds lit up. Human warships were emerging from hyperspace all around the station. Not a token rescue. This was their entire fleet. Hundreds of vessels, including classes I'd never seen before. They're not here to rescue their generals, I realized aloud. Their generals were never prisoners. This is a full-scale assault on the hegemony leadership. Another explosion. Warning lights flashed. Life support systems began to fail. We need to move, Karel urged, pulling me to my feet. We raced through the corridors toward the evacuation zone. The station's comms crackled back to life. This time, General Isla Tay's voice came through, calm and clear despite the chaos. To all non-combatants and lower-ranking personnel, we have no quarrel with you. Proceed to evacuation zones. Escape pods have been pre-programmed to reach neutral space. You will not be harmed unless you resist.
They're letting us go? Karel asked, stunned.
Psychological warfare, I explained. Rivera's specialty. Show mercy to the rank and file, focus fire on the leadership. It creates division, encourages defection. We reached the evacuation zone, crowded but strangely orderly. Hegemony citizens of all castes were boarding escape pods under the watchful eyes of human soldiers, wearing modified hegemony uniforms I'd never seen before. Special forces, I whispered to Karel. They must have infiltrated months ago. A human officer approached, weapon held casually but ready. Names and ranks, she asked. Karel Toll, security level 3, he answered, his voice shaky. Zarvan Ellen, senior intelligence analyst, I said, watching her reaction carefully. Her eyes narrowed slightly. The xenanthropologist, specialist in human behavioral studies? I nodded cautiously. She tapped her wrist device. General Virek wants to speak with you. This way, please. And my friend? I asked, motioning toward Karel. He can proceed to an escape pod. Karel looked at me uncertainly. I nodded. Go. There's nothing you can do here. As Karel joined the evacuation line, the officer led me through a series of secured corridors. Eventually, we arrived at what had once been Supreme Commander Trass's private command center. Now, General Lena Virek sat at his desk, surrounded by human personnel operating every terminal. Analyst, she greeted, as if we were old colleagues meeting for lunch. I've read your papers on human psychology and warfare doctrine. Insightful. You came closer than anyone in the hegemony to understanding us. Not close enough, apparently, I replied, glancing around the completely human-controlled command deck. Virek laughed softly. True. Please, sit. I did, feeling oddly calm given the circumstances. May I ask, what happens to me now? That depends, Virek said, leaning forward. How do you feel about consulting work? You want me to work for humans? With humans, she corrected. Your understanding of both our species makes you valuable, Zarvan, and we're going to need you. Translators, cultural translators in the new Galactic Order, I said slowly. We are establishing a new order, I repeated. This isn't just a strike on leadership, this is a full regime change. Commander Lyra smiled. Insightful. Another human entered the room. General Merrick, he said crisply, the Supreme Commander has been secured. Elan has control of the broadcast system. We're ready. Lyra nodded and turned toward a large view screen. It flickered to life, revealing General Elan standing in the execution plaza, now fully secured by human forces. Behind her, Kneeling in restraints was Supreme Commander Kale. "People of the Galactic hegemony," Elan addressed the camera. Her voice.
For too long, the hegemony ruled through fear and suppression. That ends now. She gestured toward Kale. Your Supreme Commander will face trial for war crimes. Unlike him, we do not execute prisoners for spectacle. Justice will be served through due process. The camera panned outward, revealing dozens of captured hegemony officials. To all hegemony forces, Elan continued, stand down. Your central command has fallen. We control your defense networks and communication relays. Further resistance will only result in unnecessary casualties. The broadcast went on, but I turned to Lyra. You planned this for years. Since the day the hegemony declared humans unworthy of galactic citizenship, she confirmed. We knew we couldn't match your technology or your numbers immediately, so we adapted, infiltrated, learned, waited. Why now? General Merrick interjected. Because now we dismantle the caste system that kept dozens of species in submission, Lyra replied. Now we build a federation based on equality, cooperation. I raised an eyebrow. That sounds suspiciously noble. Lyra chuckled. Humans contain multitudes, analyst, vengeful and merciful, cruel and kind. But above all, we value freedom, for ourselves and for others. And if I refuse your offer? Then you will be processed with other non-combatants, Merrick said calmly, and released into neutral space with enough resources to begin again. As I said, we are not the hegemony. I looked around the command center, humans operating a station designed for a species not their own. The view screen still displayed the captured leadership of what, only hours ago, was the most powerful force in the galaxy. I'll need time to consider, I said finally. Of course, Lyra nodded. But not too much time. The galaxy is changing quickly, Sarvan. Personally, I'd rather have you with us than against us. As I was escorted back toward the evacuation bay, I couldn't help but reflect on the irony. The execution meant to break human resistance had instead broken the hegemony. The trap laid for humans had snapped shut on our own arrogance. As the escape pod launched, carrying me toward an uncertain future, I remembered the old human saying I once tried to warn Kale with. Beware of Greeks bearing gifts. Only now did I truly understand what it meant. The pod tumbled through the void, its navigation system guiding it toward the neutral territories of the fringe worlds. I sat alone, watching the blinking status lights as automated distress signals broadcast our location to any nearby vessels. Behind us, the hegemony's central command station, once a towering symbol of our dominance, was now just a glowing speck of light surrounded by the human fleet. Escape and revelation. It's been possible, Analyst Sarl, came a voice I instantly recognized as General Adrian Curran's. Having second thoughts about our offer? I stared at the comms panel in disbelief. How are you contacting me? This pod only has basic emergency systems. Curran laughed. You still don't understand the depth of our infiltration, do you? We've had access to hegemony communication protocols for years. There's nothing you use that we can't tap into. The implications were staggering. If humans had compromised our networks so completely, what else had they penetrated? What do you want? I asked finally. Your pod's trajectory will intersect with a human vessel in approximately 40 minutes, he said. The captain has orders to bring you aboard, if you're willing. Otherwise, you'll continue to the fringe as planned. I considered my options. The fringe worlds were lawless, dominated by criminals and scavengers from a dozen species. My chances of survival there were minimal, especially once word of the hegemony's fall spread. Why me? I asked. There must be thousands of hegemony officials with more valuable intel.
We don't need intelligence, Karan replied. We already have it all. What we need are individuals who can think beyond the hegemony's propaganda. You studied us objectively. You warned your superiors about us. You were right. They were wrong. I couldn't argue with that. If I come aboard, I asked, what happens next? You'll meet Admiral Isolde Frost. She's overseeing the transition of power. A new name. Not Takeda. Not Novak. Not Karan. There were more of them in high command positions than we had realized. Karan chuckled. Oh, so many more. Your 40 minutes start now, Analyst Sarl. Choose wisely. The line went silent. 40 minutes. That's what I had to decide the course of my life. To choose between a fading empire and the species that had just outmaneuvered it completely. I spent 39 of those minutes weighing my options. In the 40th, I adjusted the pod's navigation system, setting a new course to intercept the human vessel. The ship that appeared on my screen was unlike anything I'd seen in intelligence briefings. It was massive, at least 3 times the size of any documented human capital ship. Its sleek, angular hull bore no resemblance to the utilitarian design we'd come to expect. It looked elegant, purposeful. Hegemony escape pod, came a voice over the comms. This is the USS Horizon. Prepare for tractor beam lock. A pulse of blue light enveloped my pod. I felt a gentle tug as the ship drew me in toward one of its docking bays. The bay was enormous, housing dozens of smaller craft and humming with activity. Humans in various uniforms moved with practiced precision, barely sparing a glance at my arrival. The hatch opened. I stepped out cautiously. A human—
I'm Commander Eliza Kim. Admiral Frost is expecting you. Please follow me. As we walked through the corridors, I took note of the ship's systems. Much of it was clearly hegemony-based, but improved, modified. Some of it I didn't recognize at all. Your ship, I said, glancing around. It's far more advanced than our intel suggested. Commander Kim smiled. The hegemony only saw what we allowed you to see. This vessel has been in active service for 3 years. Impossible, I muttered. Our surveillance networks showed you what our decoy fleets were designed to show, she interrupted smoothly. We built the real fleet in deep space, far from your sensors, far from your reach. We entered a lift that carried us upward through the ship's massive frame. When the doors opened, I stepped into a command center unlike any bridge I'd seen before. Unlike the chaotic, hierarchical bustle of a hegemony vessel, this space was calm, ordered, efficient. Admiral Kalen's offer, the command center was meticulously organized, its stations arranged in concentric circles around a central holographic display. Standing before that display was a tall human woman with short white hair and piercing blue eyes. She turned as we approached, analyzing me briefly before speaking. I'm Admiral Ilara Kalen. Thank you for accepting our invitation. I inclined my head respectfully. Your invitation was quite persuasive, Admiral. She offered a thin smile. Please join me. There's something you should see. I followed her to the display, which projected a detailed map of former hegemony space. Scattered across the map were dozens, no, hundreds, of pulsing red indicators. What am I looking at? I asked. The current state of Operation Trojan Horse, Admiral Kalen replied. Each red marker represents a hegemony facility, or capital ship secured by human forces, or our allies. I stared in disbelief. The markers blanketed every sector of what had once been solid hegemony territory. This is impossible, I whispered. You couldn't have coordinated an assault of this magnitude without us detecting the preparations. We didn't have to, came a new voice from behind. I turned to see General Riken Morell entering the command center. The attack began years ago with infiltration, he said. today was merely the reveal. Admiral Kalen nodded in agreement. General Morell's engineering teams developed holographic disguise tech, sophisticated enough to fool even hegemony bioscanners. We placed operatives throughout your military and government. Some rose to positions of considerable authority. The executions, I murmured. You used them as a signal to activate sleeper agents simultaneously. Precisely, Morell confirmed. We needed your leadership centralized in one place. We also needed a galaxy-wide broadcast to transmit the activation code. Sakura Blossom, I said, recalling General Thalos's final words.
A poetic choice, Kalen commented. In human culture, the sakura, or cherry blossom, symbolizes both beauty and impermanence. The hegemony saw itself as eternal. We thought the symbolism appropriate. I turned back to the display, noticing the pattern of the takeover. You prioritized communication hubs and defense networks. Of course, Morell replied. Cut off their ability to coordinate and even a superior force becomes fragile. Kalen gestured, and the map shifted to a different sector. This, she said, is where we'd like your assistance, Analyst Varen. The display highlighted a region controlled by the Krell Dominion, brutish, militaristic vassals of the former hegemony who had played an eager role in the subjugation of other species. They held a significant portion of the outer territories. What about them? I asked cautiously. They're mobilizing, Kalen explained. Unlike most of the hegemony's subject races, the Krell prospered under your empire. They had status, power. Now, they see an opportunity to fill the vacuum. And you want my insight into Krell psychology, I guessed. Exactly, Morell confirmed. Your expertise in xenoanthropology extends beyond humans. Your papers on Krell social structures were enlightening. I studied the tactical display closely. Krell battle groups were indeed on the move, consolidating along traditional vectors. They're following classic doctrine, I said. Massive force buildup. They believe overwhelming strength prevents resistance. Can they be negotiated with? Kalen asked. I paused, considering it carefully. The Krell respect strength above all. They won't come to the table unless you demonstrate undeniable superiority. We can do that, Kalen said, confidence in her voice. No, I corrected her. You misunderstand. To the Krell, demonstrating strength doesn't mean winning a battle. It means making them believe you could destroy them, but choose not to. It's about restraint, I continued, not just capability. Kalen and Morell exchanged glances. Interesting, Kalen murmured. That aligns more with our current strategy than the hegemonies ever did. The hegemony never understood the Krell, I explained. They saw them as the Krell challenge. The Krell are useful brutes, I began, but their culture has subtleties. Their concept of an honored enemy is central to their warrior code. And how does one become an honored enemy? Commander Dax asked. Defeat their champion in ritual combat, I said simply. Then, spare his life. Admiral Ryland's eyes narrowed. You're suggesting we challenge their leader to single combat? It would speak to them in terms they understand. Their current warlord, Kor Talik, is this kind of insight isn't in any of our intelligence files. Because the Dominion never bothered to understand its vassals, I said bitterly, only to use them. Admiral Ryland studied me for a long moment. You don't seem particularly loyal to the regime you served. I served knowledge, Admiral, not the regime. The Dominion suppressed my research when it contradicted their narrative of human inferiority. Your species fascinated me. But expressing that fascination was deemed inappropriate. Rylan offered a slight smile. Well, you're now free to study us. Up close. Over the next few days, I worked closely with the human command staff, offering insight into how various species might react to the Dominion's collapse. Some, like the Volrathi, would welcome human liberation. Others, like the Krell, would resist any disruption to the established order. I was given quarters aboard the Horizon and granted access to many parts of the ship. Of course, I was watched, but with each passing day the surveillance became less obvious. On the 5th day, I was invited to observe a direct communication with Krell warlord Cord Talek. Admiral Rylan had taken my advice, challenging the warlord not to a duel of blades, but of minds. "The terms are simple," Rylan said to the massive Krell on the view screen. "A strategic challenge of your choosing. If you win, the human fleet will withdraw from Krellis immediately. If I win, you will recognize the new Galactic Federation and send representatives to our Constitutional Convention." Talek's brow furrowed. "And why would I agree to such terms when I could simply crush your forces?" "You could try," Rylan replied calmly. "But first, consider this demonstration." She nodded to Dax, who activated a secondary display. The screen showed a fortified Krell outpost, bristling with defenses. Suddenly, the turrets swiveled, turning inward to target the base itself. "What treachery is this?" Talek roared. "Not treachery, technology," Rylan corrected. "Commander Dax has developed a method to remotely override command protocols in all Dominion-derived defense systems. Your entire military infrastructure relies on them." The weapons on the outpost remained locked on critical systems, but didn't fire. "We could destroy every Krell military installation simultaneously," Rylan continued. "Instead, I offer you honorable combat, mind against mind. Is the mighty Cord Talek afraid of such a challenge?" It was masterfully executed, an appeal to Krell honor, backed by a display of overwhelming technical superiority. Talek couldn't refuse without losing face before his subordinates. "I accept," the warlord growled. "The challenge will be Carax." I leaned toward Dax. Carax. A Krell strategic game. As we exited the communication chamber, Admiral Rylan surprised me with a question. "Do you play Carax, Analyst Vin?" "I've studied it," I admitted, though finding opponents in the Dominion was difficult. "Then you'll coach me tonight," she declared. "I need to understand not just the strategy, but the cultural weight behind each move." That evening, Admiral Rylan and I sat down together. Building the Federation. In her private quarters, a holographic Carax board hovered between us. I explained the nuances of a game, how certain moves were considered honorable or dishonorable, how the Krell interpreted different strategies. "The Vex Towel opening," I said, demonstrating the maneuver, "is seen as the mark of a cunning warrior. It sacrifices immediate advantage for long-term position, like offering 3 generals as bait to capture an entire empire." Captain Alira Frost raised an eyebrow with a wry smile. "Bait?" "Precisely," I replied. "Thalk respects such thinking, even as he resents being outmaneuvered." As we played, I found myself increasingly at ease in Frost's presence. She was intelligent, thoughtful, and genuinely interested in understanding other cultures, qualities sorely absent in the former hegemony leadership. "May I ask a personal question, Admiral?" I ventured during a lull in our game. "Certainly. Why did humans hide their true capabilities for so long? You could have revealed your technological superiority years ago." Frost considered this carefully. "We needed time, not just to build our forces, but to form relationships with other oppressed species. The hegemony's fall had to benefit everyone, not just humans." "A noble sentiment," I observed. "Also a practical one," she countered. "Lasting peace can't be built on domination. That was the hegemony's fatal flaw." The next day, Admiral Frost faced Warlord Thalk in their Carax match. It was broadcast throughout the remnants of hegemony space, a symbolic moment for the new order. Frost played brilliantly, honoring Krell traditions while weaving in unexpected innovations. When she finally maneuvered Thalk into an unwinnable position, she offered him an honorable draw, a gesture that preserved his pride while securing humanity's goals. "You play with the soul of a Krell warrior," Thalk said, grudgingly impressed. "The Dominion will send representatives to your convention." After the broadcast ended, celebrations erupted across the Horizon systems. The Krell had been the last major holdout against the new Federation. With their support secured, the transition of power could proceed peacefully. General Ilias Rivera found me observing the celebrations from a quiet alcove. "Civ, well done. Your insights into Krell psychology were crucial." "Thank you, General, though Admiral Frost deserves credit for the execution." Rivera leaned against the wall beside me. "Have you decided whether to accept our offer permanently? And we're forming a diplomatic quorum, and could use someone with your cultural expertise." I had been weighing that question for days. If I accept, what would my role entail? "Cultural liaison," he said, "helping us understand the species we're now responsible for, helping them understand us." He paused before adding, "We're not trying to replace one empire with another." "Then the Federation will be a true partnership among species?" "You believe that's possible?" I asked. "Genuine cooperation between such different forms of life?" "I have to," Rivera replied simply. "The alternative is endless cycles of domination and rebellion." 2 weeks later, I stood in the grand hall of what had once been the hegemony's central complex on Axis Prime. The space had been transformed. Representatives from 27 species had gathered to draft the Federation Constitution. Admiral Frost now served as the lead human diplomat, working alongside Elder Tress of the Volrathi, Sub-Warlord Ma of the Krell, and other major delegates. I served as a special advisor to the diplomatic team, bridging cultural gaps that threatened to derail the negotiations. "Volrathi delegates are concerned about Article 7, I informed Frost during a recess. "Their species makes decisions by consensus, not majority vote. The Federation Council's voting structure feels alien to them." Frost nodded thoughtfully. "Suggest a dual-track system. Majority vote for routine matters, consensus required for foundational decisions. They'll appreciate the accommodation." Recognition of their values. It was exhausting, intricate work. Balancing the needs and cultural expectations of dozens of species demanded everything I had. Yet it was also the most fulfilling work I'd ever done. For the first time, my knowledge of xenoanthropology wasn't being used to identify weaknesses for exploitation. It was being used to build bridges. 6 months after the fall of the Dominion, the Galactic Federation Charter was ratified. The document established a representative council with proportional governance, protected the autonomy of all member worlds, and enshrined the principles of cultural respect and non-interference. As I watched the signing ceremony, General Sariel stepped beside me. "Congratulations, Advisor Elan," she said, using my new title. "Without your insights, this moment might never have happened." "You give me too much credit, General," I replied. "This was your victory, years in the making." Sariel shook her head. "The easy part was defeating the Dominion. The hard part is building something better. That's where you've been invaluable." We stood in silence, watching representatives of once warring species interact with cautious optimism. "I've been meaning to ask," I said finally. "Why did you spare the Dominion's leadership? After